Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we're back here today with another edition of Budget Magic. So we got a pretty special one this week. A lot of people have been asking for Standard since we've been in Modern for the last few weeks, but the problem I was having is Standard rotates in like 2 weeks, and I didn't really want to make a sweet budget list, only to have it rotate, have people go out and buy it, and then not be able to play it. So I figured if I'm going to do a Standard deck, I'm going to do a completely post-rotation Standard deck, and it ended up that we just had a very unique opportunity to build a post-rotation Mono-Blue Eldrazi deck. The unique thing about this deck is not only is it completely post-rotation, so this is, every single card will be legal, not only for the next 2 weeks, but the next 6 months, and realistically, these cards will probably be seen play in Standard for the next year. So you can buy this deck and plan on being able to play it without making too many changes, maybe a few sideboard cards for the next year. But the other sweet thing is, Eldrazi don't really get any additions from Shadows over Innistrad. All the good colorless cards are already in the format. Maybe you'll change up some in the sideboard, of course, but otherwise, all the main pieces are going to be the same. So not only do you not lose anything at rotation, you don't even gain anything at rotation. So this deck kind of is what it is. I expect that if I was going to make a budget Mono-Blue Eldrazi list 6 months from now, it would look very similar to this, with a few changes to the sideboard. And one other thing that is sweet about this deck is if you buy the main pieces of this deck, which we're about to talk about, not only can you play Mono-Blue Eldrazi, but you can play a whole smorgasbord of Eldrazi decks in Standard. So you're kind of getting 4 decks for almost the price of one. You got to add some specific pieces and add a bit more money depending on the color, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to talk about that at the end of the video. Anyway, let's run down the cards in this deck. First off, these are what I would consider the core cards. If you were playing an Eldrazi deck in Standard, or in Modern, or in Legacy, or any colors you want, no matter what, these cards are likely going to be in your deck. Discounting the ramp builds like Tron or the Ulamog builds, but the mid-range aggro builds, you're always playing these cards. So 4 Eldrazi Mimics, 2 mana, 2/1. When another colorless creature enters the battlefield, you can change Eldrazi Mimic's base power and toughness to be the same as that creature. So it's a 2/1 for 2, not that exciting, but it can be super aggressive when we play a 4/4 or a 5/5, and it can just attack for a ton of damage. Actually, some of our best starts involve Eldrazi Mimic on turn 2, Eldrazi Mimic on turn 3, a 4/4 on turn 4, a 5/5 on turn 5, attack with those Mimics, and it's just really hard to beat that kind of draw. So speaking of 4/4s and 5/5s, we have 4 Thought-Knot Seers, 3 and a colorless for an Eldrazi that's a 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, you look at your opponent's hand, and you get to exile a card from it. But then when Thought-Knot Seer leaves the battlefield, target opponent draws a card. So it's a little like Vendilion Click. You get to Thought Seize essentially your opponent when Thought-Knot enters the battlefield, but then when it leaves, your opponent gets that card back. The good news is, with the Thought Seize ability, you're taking your opponent's best card, or most threatening card, and then they're just drawing a random card, which can be a useless land, some 1-drop that doesn't really matter. So on average, even if your opponent gets to redraw that card, you're coming out ahead in that exchange. And then we have 4 copies of Reality Smasher, 4 in a colorless for a 5/5, Trample and Haste. Whenever it becomes the target of a spell an opponent controls, you counter that spell unless its controller discards a card. So this is just super aggressive. It turns our Eldrazi Mimics into a 5/5. It attacks for 5 with haste and trample, gets through most things in the format, and if our opponent ever wants to kill it, they essentially have to 2-for-1 themselves when they target with a removal spell because they have to discard a card from their hand. So those are the foundational pieces of the Eldrazi deck. Eldrazi Mimic, Thought-Knot Seer, Reality Smasher. Then we have some more that are borderline foundational pieces. Hedron Crawler, 2 mana, 0/1. But you can tap it to add a colorless mana. I'm tempted to call this a foundational piece. I expect that we'll see this showing up in a lot of Eldrazi decks moving forward. It's just so good because it allows us to cast our Thought-Knot Seers and our Reality Smashers on turn 3 and turn 4 instead of on turn 4 and turn 5. And speeding up the clock by an extra turn like that is sometimes a really big deal. Plus it benefits from some of our other colorless synergies and abilities we'll talk about as we keep going through the list. Then we have a single Endbringer. I have no idea if Endbringer is good. It does a lot of things. So it's a 5 mana or a 6 mana 5/5. One of the mana has to be colorless. You untap it during each other player's untap step. So it untaps on our turn and our opponent's turn. You can tap it to deal a damage to creature or player. You can pay colorless and tap it to make a creature not attack or block this turn. And you can pay 2 colorless and tap it to draw a card. So it is really the Swiss Army knife Eldrazi. It's a little expensive, and I just wanted to try it out. I really like Endbringer. I think it's sweet. I don't know if it deserves to be in Tier 1 standard list, if it's that good. But I wanted to test it out and find out, because I haven't really gotten to play with it yet. So that's why it's in the deck. I mostly want to see if it's good. Then we have some blue-specific Eldrazi. So I was talking about how with Eldrazi you can play a whole bunch of different colors. Well, these are the reasons to be blue Eldrazi. So we have 4-dimensional infiltrators. 1 in a blue, you get a 2/1. It has Devoid, Flying, and Flash, so technically it's colorless. And you can pay 1 in a colorless to exile the top card of your opponent's library. And if it's a land, you have the option of bouncing Dimensional Infiltrator back to your hand. So it's just a good 2-drop. The deck needed more 2-drops. It has Flying and Flash, so it can get in evasive damage and kind of surprise an opponent out of nowhere. Then one card that I am super excited about is Blinding Drone. So 2 mana, you get a 1/3 with the Void. You can pay a colorless and tap it to tap target creature. So it might sound silly to be excited about a tapper in in Constructed. That's more of a limited thing, but this card is so good in the mirror. Like, these Eldrazi decks, especially the blue ones, but a lot of them aren't playing that much removal, and what removal you do have, you gotta kind of save for the big threats. So Blinding Drone blocks a lot of stuff as a 1/3. It blocks a Sylvan Advocate and most 2 mana plays in the format. And then in the mid and late game, it's just 1 mana, never get hit by your Reality Smasher. 1 mana, never get hit by your Ulamog. It just totally controls the board in the Eldrazi mirrors. So for me, this is one of the best reasons to be blue Eldrazi. This card is just so good if everyone's playing big creature Eldrazi decks. And then finally, for Eldrazi Sky Spawner, 2 in a blue. For a 2/1, has Devoid, has Flying. When it enters the battlefield, you get a Scion token that you can sack to add a mana. This one's just a good value play. The Scion token can help us fix our mana, because we do need colorless mana for some of our cards and abilities. Plus, it's 3 power and 2 toughness split up across 2 bodies for only 3 mana, so it's an efficient deal. It has Flying, so it gets in some evasive damage. So all around, it's just a really solid card. And then the rest of our blue cards, 4 Ruination Guides, our Colorless Lord, 3 mana for a 3/2, has Devoid and Ingest. Other colorless creatures we control get +1/+1. So our Blinding Drone becomes a 2/3. Our Reality Smasher becomes a 6/5. But the big reason that we like this card is we do have some non-Eldrazi colorless creatures. For example, the 2 colorless Thopter artifact creature tokens with Flying that are created by Whirler Rogue. So Whirler Rogue, 4 mana, 2/2, creates those artifact creature tokens we just talked about, and then has an ability where you can tap to untap artifacts you control to make it so a creature you control can't be blocked. It just does so much. You get 4 power and toughness for 4 mana. You get the 2 artifact creature tokens, which benefit from Ruination Guide and become 2/1s, so they're even more aggressive. And then we can tap those tokens, or tap our Hedron Crawler, which also happens to be an artifact, to make something unblockable, like our Reality Smasher or Thought-Knot Seer, to get in those last points of damage. And then we have 2 copies of Negate. Negate is just the catch-all answer to some really bad things. Our deck gets wrecked by Chandra Flamecaller. Wraths can be pretty devastating if we overextend. So we can hold Negate in our hand and use it to counter those specific spells. Also, Rally the Ancestors. It won't be around after rotation, thank God, but right now that's a spell that you just really have to counter. So Negate is our way to hedge in the main deck against those really powerful non-creature spells. So then mana base wise, we are essentially a 2-color deck, but instead of being blue and red or blue and green, we are blue and colorless, because we have so many colorless spells that need real colorless mana. We have to build our mana base in a way to support that. So we have 4 Ruins of Oran-Reef, then we have 1 Seagate Wreckage, and then we have 4 Foundry of the Consuls. Basically another way to make Thopter tokens. So it adds colorless, pay 5, sack it, and you can make 2 colorless Thopter artifact tokens, just like Whirler Rogue, really. So it's another way to power up our Whirler Rogue. Works good with our Lords and other colorless synergies. And then we have a single Spawning Bed, kind of like Foundry of the Consuls, except it costs 6 to sack. And instead of 2 1/1 flyers, you get 3 1/1 ground Eldrazi Scion tokens that we can sack for mana. And then 4, you have Maya Coast. This one is a dual land, but not in the way you might expect. It is a blue and colorless dual land, since you can tap it for colorless, or you can pay a life to tap it for blue. We don't care about the green mana. You could also play Shivan Reef in this slot, but yeah, Maya Coast is a bit cheaper. That's why we went with that. And then 9 islands, the best land in Magic's history. So that's the mana base. So I'm not going to talk about the sideboard in depth. You can see it on the screen. We got a Dispel, 3 Encase in Ice, 2 Negates, 3 Warping Whale, 2 Scatter to the Winds, a Whirler Rogue, 2 Icefall Regents, and an Endbringer. I will say that Warping Whale is sweet because it kills Jace and counters a Wrath, and that Icefall Regent is a good way to tap down Big Eldrazi. Otherwise, the problem is, we're looking ahead towards rotation, so all the sideboard is subject to change. Like right now, we need Negates and Dispels to fight Rally the Ancestors, but Rally the Ancestors is going to be gone. So we just don't know what the sideboard should look like post-rotation, so I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it. Instead, what I wanted to do was talk about how, if you buy the foundation of this deck, so the colorless cards, the Mimics, Hedron Crawlers, Thought-Knot Seers, Reality Smashers, maybe Endbringers, in the colorless mana base, how you can, without too much extra work or money, play a bunch of different decks. So one option is Mono-Red Eldrazi. These are not post-rotation lists, and they are not budgetized. It's just to give you an example of how flexible these cards are. So, you got the Hedron Crawlers, Thought-Knot Seers, Reality Smashers. Instead of the blue cards, you play Thopter Engineer, Vile Aggregate, and Pian Karen Nalar. Then you get some removal like Roast and Chandra Flamecaller, and bam! You have a Mono-Red Eldrazi list. You add in 100 extra bucks or whatever, and you have a whole different deck that is similar to the Mono-Blue list, but plays differently. There's a lot of different cards in there, and the way the deck plays is different. Then you can build Blue-Red Eldrazi. Plays a lot of the same cards, except you get an Eldrazi Obligator, you get Herald of Kozilek, you get Vile Aggregate. So you jam it together in a different way, and this one doesn't cost much at all to upgrade, probably 20 bucks or something, and you can have a whole nother deck if you buy the Reality Smashers, Thought-Knot Seers, Eldrazi Mimics, and so forth. You add in a little bit more money, the deck plays all different. Then you can play Mono-Black Eldrazi. This one plays much different. It's got discard, it's got removal, but still you have the same foundation. Reality Smasher, Thought-Knot Seer, Eldrazi Mimic, and then you have it backed up by Bearer of Silence, Grasp of Darkness, Transgress the Mind. So it's just amazing how many different decks this fit into. And then Green-Black Eldrazi. Almost the same, except you get green for Sylvan Advocate and Catacomb Sifter and even some Nissas. And then you get the removal, but you still got the Thought-Knots, Reality Smashers. Like it or not, Eldrazi are a great buy for budget players right now. That's what I'm trying to get across. Because if you put out the money to buy the Thought-Knot Seers, the Reality Smashers, and Matter Reshaper potentially, even though that's not in our deck, the Hedron Crawlers and the Eldrazi Mimics, if you spend that $70, $80 for those cards, the possibilities are really endless. Without adding too much more money, you can play a black deck, you can play a red deck, you can play a black-green deck, you can play a blue-red deck. There's just so many things you can do once you have that foundation, and that foundation isn't going away. It's not going to get bad. It's hard to imagine it not being a part of Standard, not only after rotation in 2 weeks, but after rotation this fall. They just printed so many powerful colorless cards, and they're printing more powerful colorless lands. It's just, as a budget player, my advice would be buy the foundational Eldrazi spells, and you will have these cards for the next year and be able to play them in multiple color combinations without adding too much more money to your deck. And I would wager that at every point during the next year, or at least at most points, some color combination of this colorless shell is going to be good in Standard. It's just the cards are too powerful for it not to be good. So that's my advice. If you are interested in preparing for rotation, get your Eldrazi. If you build the blue deck we played in the list, you will be ready to jump into your Friday Night Magic the day rotation happens and have a competitive deck. So give it a shot, and it's actually fun to play. Eldrazi have gotten a bit of a bad rap just because they've been so overpowered and people are maybe tired of them, but the deck is fun to play, and these cards are fun to cast, and it's a pretty sweet deck. So get your Eldrazi cards. You'll be ready for rotation not only in 2 weeks, but also this fall, and you can play that deck for $100 or less, and then put in another $100 and have 3 or 4 different decks and play those decks for the next year. And that is a really cheap way to be able to stay in Standard and be competitive, because the cards in the deck are really good. Anyway, make sure to check out the website, mtggoldfish.com. Got decks, prices, metagame strategy, pretty much everything and anything you could want related to Magic the Gathering. And if you enjoyed our Eldrazi videos, our post-rotation Eldrazi videos, make sure to click the subscribe button and the like button that are about to pop up on the bottom of your screen. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoy our Mono-Blue Eldrazi videos in Standard, and I will talk to you soon.